Right. So whilst Keir Starmer's approval ratings are absolutely cratering faster than a dodgy submarine, Richard Tice has just lobbed what might be Labour's worst nightmare into the political arena. And no, I'm not talking about another Brexit debate. Thank goodness. This time, it's about something that actually matters to millions of British families, something Labour has spectacularly failed to address whilst they've been busy taxing businesses into oblivion and watching youth unemployment figures that would make even Gordon Brown weep into his calculator. Reform UK just announced they are taking on the special educational needs and disabilities system, and honestly, the timing couldn't be more devastating for Starmer. Stick around, because this gets properly fascinating. Quick favour, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the absolute chaos of British politics, smash that subscribe button. Seriously, over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free. Takes literally 1 second, and it genuinely means a world to us here at British Mirror. Whilst you're at it, whack that notification bell so you never miss when we expose the next political disaster. Cheers if you did. Right, back to Starmer's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week. Let's set the scene properly, shall we? Picture this. It's a frosty morning at Reform UK headquarters, and whilst most political parties are winding down for Christmas, preparing their sanitised holiday messages and dreaming of mince pies, Richard Tice is standing in front of a massive teal backdrop with the words "Britain needs reform" emblazoned across it. There's a giant television screen displaying "Sen needs reform," and you can practically feel political electricity crackling through the air. This isn't your typical pre-Christmas political fluff piece. This is Reform UK positioning themselves as a government in waiting, tackling an issue that affects hundreds of thousands of British families who've been let down by successive governments. Now, Tice announces that Reform UK is launching a working group specifically dedicated to fixing the special educational needs and disability system, and is not pulling punches here. He says, and I quote, "The SEND system is broken in Britain, and Reform are determined to fix it." This working group will be chaired by Dame Andrea Jenkins, someone with considerable professional and personal experience in the sector. Not some random political appointee who fancies a title, but someone who actually understands the cold face of this crisis. The group will include reform counsellors and experts, and they are promising an interim report in the first quarter of 2026. That's actual timelines, actual accountability, actual action. Revolutionary concepts in British politics. I know, but here's where it gets absolutely brilliant from a tactical standpoint. Whilst Tice is out there announcing concrete plans to help vulnerable children and their families, what's happening to Keir Starmer? Oh, just as approval ratings plummeting to depths previously thought impossible for a Prime Minister. Fresh YouGov polling shows that just 18% of Britons have a favourable opinion of Sir Keir Starmer. 18%. That's the lowest level since he became Labour leader back in 2020. Let that sink in for a moment. The man spent years in opposition positioning himself as a sensible alternative, the grown-up in the room, the knight in shining armour who would rescue Britain from conservative chaos. And now, his net approval score sits at -54, with 72% viewing him unfavourably. You literally couldn't write a more devastating political collapse if you tried. Now, you might be thinking, well, surely Labour must be doing something about the SEND crisis, right? Wrong. Spectacularly wrong. Whilst Reform is actively creating working groups and proposing solutions, Labour has been busy destroying jobs, raising taxes, and generally making life harder for the very people they claim to champion. Former Employment Minister Mims Davies absolutely eviscerated the government performance, saying she's never seen such desolate figures where frankly no real action or urgency is being reflected by this dire Labour government. And she's not wrong, is she? The local Job Centre Plus teams are apparently brilliant, but they are being hamstrung by a government that's squeezing and taxing businesses out of existence. Let me paint you a picture of just how broken the SEND system actually is, because this isn't some abstract policy debate. This is real children, real families, real lives being affected every single day. Tice describes a reality where children are travelling in taxis for 60 to 90 minutes every day just to reach a specialist school. 90 minutes. That's longer than some adults' commutes. Imagine being a child with additional needs, exhausted before you even start your school day, trapped in a taxi for hours upon hours each week because successive governments couldn't be bothered to create adequate local provision. But here's where Tice's vision actually becomes rather inspired. He's proposing something genuinely creative. Why not use redundant churches that currently sit empty 6 days a week? He's literally seen it work with his own eyes, a school in the north of England renting a church 5 days a week. Imagine specialist schools for differently abled children. He says, using those churches in rural areas, serving 2 or 3 villages. What a brilliant way to show real leadership from the Church of England. It's practical, it's innovative, it's cost-effective, and it actually addresses the geographical challenges that rural families face. This is the kind of thinking that makes you wonder why on earth nobody in Westminster has implemented it already. And Tice makes another absolutely crucial point that deserves highlighting. He says, nobody is disabled, people are differently abled. That is the opportunity. That's what we're determined to do. We have to do things better. Now, whether you agree with reform on other policies or not, this framing is genuinely important. It shifts the conversation from limitations to possibilities, from deficits to different abilities. That's not just politically savvy language. That's fundamentally changing how we approach supporting children who learn and interact with the world differently. Meanwhile, back in Labour land, things are going from bad to catastrophically worse. The unemployment figures have just dropped, and they're absolutely dreadful. Liberal Democrat Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper pointed out that the government claims it's on the side of working people, but it's workers and job seekers paying the price of their failures. For people worried about their jobs, these figures are the last thing anyone wanted to see before Christmas. The so-called jobs tax that Labour implemented is making it prohibitively expensive for businesses to employ people. Businesses are literally struggling to stay afloat under massive tax increases, and the Chancellor apparently needs a wake-up call to reverse the damage before it becomes irreparable. Mims Davies went further, highlighting something absolutely heartbreaking. Young people are leaving Britain in droves, and who can blame them? Why should they stay under what she called this Labour shower? They're actively destroying jobs and young futures, she says, and it genuinely hurts to watch. She's calling for the return of Kickstart, more sector-based work academy programs, and an actual sense of urgency rather than more benefits and report waffle. But what's Labour doing? Commissioning more reports whilst the wider Department for Work and Pensions ministerial team remains invisible and outcomes for the next generation with like seasonal jobs and work opportunities. Waiting 18 months to act for young people is, in her words, hopeless for them and our country's future. But reform isn't just focusing on send and employment. They are positioning themselves across multiple policy areas, far beyond the immigration and Europe issues they are often stereotyped with. Richard Tice also weighed in on the BBC controversy involving President Trump's lawsuit, and he didn't hold back. He says the BBC needs wholesale change to tackle bias. Whilst the corporation has already seen the Director General and Head of News depart, Tice argues there needs to be a complete clear-out of bias, whether it's against President Trump, against the Jewish community, or in numerous other areas where they consistently get things wrong. This connects to another absolute car crash for Labour. Care Minister Stephen Kinnock had to address comments made by Dale Vince, a significant Labour donor, regarding the Bondi Beach atrocity. Kinnock stated that it's completely wrong to blame Jewish people collectively for the Israeli government's actions, and that Vince's initial tweet could have given that impression. He's calling for Vince to apologize, and Labour will review their position based on that. Imagine having to publicly demand your own major donor apologize for potentially anti-Semitic implications. That's the kind of week Labour is having whilst Reform announces substantive policy initiatives. The contrast couldn't be starker, could it? On one side, you got Reform UK holding their second press conference in 2 days, deliberately not winding down for Christmas, actively portraying themselves as an agenda-setting outfit ready for government whenever the next election arrives. They are tackling subjects that genuinely matter to families across the nation, from send provision to youth employment to media bias. They are proposing concrete solutions, setting actual timelines, appointing experienced professionals to lead working groups, and thinking creatively about resource allocation. On the other side, you've got Labour with a Prime Minister whose approval ratings have hit rock bottom, a Chancellor whose tax policies are destroying jobs, ministerial teams that are apparently invisible, youth unemployment figures that are devastating, major donors causing embarrassing controversies, and absolutely no sense of urgency about any of it. They are commissioning reports whilst families struggle. They are raising taxes whilst businesses close. They are talking about helping working people whilst making it harder and more expensive to employ anyone. The political implications here are enormous. Reform UK is deliberately demonstrating that they are not a single-issue protest party. They are showing they can develop detailed policy positions on complex issues affecting millions of Britons. They are proving they can think beyond their core messaging about immigration in Europe. They are building the infrastructure, expertise, and credibility needed to be taken seriously as a potential party of government. And they are doing all of this whilst Labour implodes under the weight of its own contradictions and failures. For families dealing with the SEND system, this announcement from Reform represents something they've desperately needed. Hope. Hope that someone in politics actually understands their daily struggles. Hope that innovative solutions might actually be implemented. Hope that their children might not have to endure 90-minute taxi rides to access appropriate education. Hope that redundant buildings in their communities could be transformed into specialist schools. Hope that politicians might start viewing their children through the lens of different abilities rather than disabilities. For Keir Starmer, though, this represents yet another front opening in what's becoming an unwinnable war on multiple battlegrounds. His approval ratings are in freefall,